Good afternoon, everybody. Great. In the interest of time, I'm going to get started. I know folks are still trying to get some food, but if you all can just listen while I'm speaking, so everybody can get home at a decent hour. Right? For those of you who do not know me, my name is Eddie Capote. I am one of the co-chairs of the Home Committee, along with Lisa and Ellie and Rob Hammock. We've been at this for a good 3.5 years now, and we're excited about what's to come. But before we start that, I need to do a little bit of confession. I'm not much of a Christmas Day fan. There's a lot that goes on Christmas Day, a lot of craziness that happens, and we do not quite get to enjoy the moment. However, I am a fan of the Advent season. The Advent season is a time of preparation where we conscientiously take a look at what we're doing and as individuals and as a congregation to prepare for things. I think with the Home Project, we're in that Advent season right now. We're in that time of preparation as a congregation for what's to come. We're going to have that day where we have a ribbon cutting ceremony and it's going to be all this pomp and circumstance, but we've been doing the work for way before that, and we'll be doing a lot of work after that. So this is the prime time for us to start preparing as a congregation for those 21 individuals that we do not know yet. And Lisa hears me say this all the time, right? So she's probably bored of it. But there's 21 people that we do not know yet, right? That are going to be living on our campus with a vast amount of life experience that they're going to bring to this campus. And that happen to be homeless right now, but will have a place to live sometime in the not too distant future. And we as a congregation will be blessed to be able to have that opportunity to host those 21 individuals on this property. All right, so, and I look forward to it, and I am excited about that opportunity. So, some of the pieces, I'm supposed to give you an update on the financials and the construction and stuff like that. I'll tell you that the financials have changed 3 times this week. So if I try and give you a number of where we're at, I'll probably be lying to you because it's changed no less than 3 times this week. What I can say is that we feel confident that by March timeframe, we'll be ready to start construction in earnest. And it will take about 8 to 9 months to complete that construction. The demolition's complete, so for the most part, if you go over there and try and walk around, there's not much left there. So the demolition, we did that a couple of months ago. It's wrapping up now. So we feel in a confident place that when we start the construction, probably in the March timeframe, we'll be really, really good, right? So some of the other things that we've done from a preparation perspective. We chartered a group about 1.5 years ago called Thriving Congregations. We've partnered with a group out of Montreat to really start looking at what we need as a congregation, not just today, but in the long term. And Marilyn has been gracious enough to go ahead and co-chair that for us and really get this off the ground. And we've been doing a lot of work with that, and she wanted to give us a brief update of where we're at with that right now.
Hey everybody. Oops. Can you make this stand over here? Talented beyond what I believed. As Eddie said, I keep wanting to say good morning. Hello everybody, I'm Marilyn Gill. I am part of your Thriving Congregations team. I want to tell you briefly what that's about, but mostly today I'm here to tell you about what we have gathered and gleaned from the house meetings that you all participated in over the course of at least the past year. So, but first, let me tell you a little about Thriving Congregations. So we started not quite 1.5 years ago. Our original call or charge was to take a look at how we could prepare as a congregation for Easter's Home and for 21 new neighbors here to share this campus with us. You've seen us before. We've done some relational meetings, one-on-one, where we met with you. You've been part of the house meetings that we did. I do want to introduce you to our team in case you don't know us already. Right here to my left, Eddie Capote is one of our members just here in front of me. Jessica, would you please just stand up for a minute so people can see you in case they don't know you? Jessica Iscael. Felicia over there, who, let's say thanks, who made sure we'd have such lovely snacks and things to eat for today. Gail and John both serve on the committee, and Jonathan Horton, who is not able to be here with us today. We hope you will get to know us a whole lot more over the coming, years. So let me tell you about that. As I said, we started around Easter's home. We have visited Montreat 3 times over the last year and a half. We've stayed for 3 days at a time. We have been trained by some folks who call themselves the Black Mountain School of Theology. Fabulous batch of people. 2 of them have written this book called Organizing Church, Tim Condor and Dan Rhodes. And that's really what they are teaching us. They've taught us about relational meetings. They taught us about how to do house meetings. They taught us about an activity we hope to do with you someday called the River of Life, which takes a look at recovering our own history as a church, discerning our values and our visions, and orienting us towards our goals and our hopes and dreams. This is the stuff they're teaching us. The small subtitle to this is Grassroots Practices for Embodying Change in Your Congregation, Your Community, and Our World. And that's what we hope to be for you. So we started thinking it was somewhat short-term, and now we recognize it and hope that Thriving Congregations is going to be part of our church for literally decades to come. We hope this will be a thriving congregation for 30, 40, 50, 100 years when the little ones are running it all. So look for us in the spring. We're going to keep up with Thriving Congregation with the Black Mountain School team. We hope to bring, as I said, River of Life to you. We're inviting these folks to come down and do some training with us that we hope to share, to offer to all of you. If you have any questions anywhere along the way, or have some thoughts about where you might like to see our church go, what the values or visions, hopes and dreams you have for our church, your Thriving Congregations team is here to listen to that, okay? So please remember who we are and ask. And if you'd like to join our team, we would love to have you. So the real reason I'm here today is to tell you a little bit about what you told us. We held, 7, 8, 9, 10 house meetings all across our congregation over the past year, and these are the things that you told us. You shared with us thoughts, ideas, questions, wonderings, hopes, primarily about Easter's home. So we're here to tell you a little bit today about what you told us. We're not here to answer those questions. We're here to set sort of the tone for the questions we want to answer, the conversations we want to have over the coming year. First, I want to say, you all are amazing. Your questions were so thoughtful, they were so honestly profound. You're going to hear that when I share with you what you've told us here. Today, as I said, is not really about answering the questions, it's just about sharing them. So the first things people asked about, or some of the things, were physical considerations, construction. Are we going to have parking and asbestos and smoking areas? How are we going to do funding? How's it going to be managed, ongoing? Those kinds of questions, some of them have already been answered, and they're going to continue to be answered by the home committee, by the folks at Roof Above. We're here to talk about some of the other ones. Most of the questions you asked us actually focused on our new neighbors, on the coming of our new neighbors to share this campus with us. And a couple of you recognized that we too, in talking about Easter's Home, we're talking about a 30, 40, 50-year plus commitment for our church. I just want you to let that settle in. Okay. So one important area that people wondered about was what we as a congregation and some of our individual neighbors have had experience with or understanding in terms of issues around homelessness. One of the things Thriving Congregations hopes to do is to help our church as a whole, the home committee, roof above, to begin to think about ways we can grow our learning, grow our understanding in the times to come around issues of homelessness. We had a second set of questions about security issues on the campus here, about drug use or mental health crises or visitors, and we know those are going to get asked as we go along and addressed as we go along. But there were two main areas that you all had questions about. The first was about community building. So here are some of your questions. How will we spend time together with our new neighbors? How will we create gathering and shared and safe spaces at Easter's Home and throughout our campus? How will we encourage a sharing of stories, their stories, our stories, reciprocity in the sharing of stories? How will we involve our neighbors, their families, and their children in our community gatherings? Can we share meals together? Can we garden together? Can we go on field trips together? Can we have game nights and movie nights? Can we do computer classes? Can we create a welcome wagon? You all have great ideas. Then we had a second series. Here's where I get to the really profound stuff. Again, y'all are amazing. Some of the hows, when I think about how God works, I think Gail said it in maybe it was Terry in her closing, how as we come to talk about this today, we hear a message on not just making space, but belonging. I just don't think that was a coincidence. So, some of the hows. How will we make engagement safe for our neighbors and their families? How will we protect the privacy and the confidentiality of our neighbors and their families? How can we as a congregation and as individuals become volunteers, mentors with our neighbors? The question there was, how can I be helpful? How can we be helpful? How can we be sure to respect that some of our neighbors and their families may not be interested in engagement with Caldwell? They're here to live. How will we need to respect our neighbors' boundaries? Obviously, a key piece there as well. How will we respect ours, congregationally and individually? How will we create a language and a culture that speaks to our common humanity rather than our differences? So we heard this one come up a couple of times in different ways. Not an us and them culture, but a we. Some of the examples that we talked about were when we introduce a member from Easter's Home to another member of the congregation. Are we saying, well, this is my friend from Easter's Home? Or is this just my friend in our congregation? Or this is the woman I worked with in our computer class or in our resume writing class from Easter's Home. Or this is my friend who I'm getting to know. How can we learn the needs of our neighbors and take that information to advocate for them beyond Easter's Home and beyond Caldwell? How will Easter's Home impact our relationship with the broader Elizabeth community? And then how can we as a congregation gather clear information on outside resources so we don't try to be all for our neighbors and their families? And then, on Terry's note, so we're making space for those who might want to belong here. How do we help do that? So, those are the questions you gave us. I wasn't kidding when I said pretty profound. And that's the stuff we are, as a congregation, hoping to explore over the coming next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. One of the things that always I'm in awe with Caldwell is the depth and breadth of expertise that we have within Caldwell. And one of the wonderful things that we need to do during this Advent season of Easter's Home is to start learning what we don't know, right? So, and Dr. Lori Thomas has graciously accepted helping us through that and helping Caldwell build a curriculum to truly understand what we need to do as a congregation to move forward and to truly understand what it means to be formerly homeless, right? So, thank you, Lori. One of the other things that we did was pick a great partner, right? In Roof Above, and we went through a pretty detailed process to be able to get to that spot, right? And Lisa, one of our co-chairs of Easter's Home, headed that process, and she wants to give us an update.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Thompson. If you don't know me, I'm one of your elders. And just a little backstory. When I walked through the doors of Caldwell almost 4 years ago, new to Charlotte, it was probably the second or third Sunday that I heard about the Easter's Home project, and I knew I'd found the right place because I started my career in affordable housing 32 years ago, working for a faith-based company in California. So churches building affordable housing is not a new thing for me, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this project with you guys. I headed up the Partner Selection Committee that began meeting in May of this year, and I'm just going to introduce those that are in the room that were on that committee. Eddie was on the committee with us, co-leading it. We also had Jeff Brown. Where's Jeff? There's Jeff. Suzanne Cowden, I saw at church. Is she? Oh yeah, there she is. We had Ann Dorsett. I don't think I saw Ann here today. Liz Kincaid, and then of course Lori Thomas. We met several times over the summer to educate ourselves on both the concept of supportive housing, but also the housing first model. And Lori did a great job of educating us on that. You heard Liz talk a little bit about housing first earlier today, and I'm sure she'll say a little bit more here in a bit. We also talked about the different methods of providing rental assistance, because it's important to note that sometimes you'll hear, oh, the rents are affordable. But are they affordable for all? Because many times affordable rents are based on an income limit in your city, and the rent is based on that limit. But some folks are making $5,000 a year, and they're under that same income limit as those making $25,000 a year. So rent for somebody making $25,000 a year is obviously more affordable than making $5,000. Fortunately, we have some programs through the government and city organizations that will subsidize folks to their need. And it is actually possible in these programs to pay nothing for rent, and in fact get money each month to help cover the utilities. And so that was important to understand too, that affordable is not always affordable for all. We determined, actually before I got involved with this project, this church determined that they wanted to entertain 3 different potential partners: Supportive Housing Communities, Carolina Cares Partnership, and Roof Above. And as our committee continued its work, Jeff Brown was very instrumental in putting together a request for information for us that we sent out to our 3 potential partners, and we asked them to return those by early September. And they all 3 filled out, did a great job of providing the information for us. But as we sat and discussed those RFIs, we realized that we weren't just looking for a supportive housing partner. We weren't just looking for somebody to help us with the supportive housing services. We really wanted that partner to also be our property manager. And so we went back to those 3 and said, look, we want this additional piece in this as well, and asked them to be prepared to speak about that when we met with them in person. So we held in-person interviews here on Monday, October 10th. And had 2 or 3 folks from each of the 3 organizations come throughout the day, and our committee, the Partner Selection Committee, plus the leadership team for Easter's Home, which includes Eddie, myself, Ellie Dye, and Rob Hammock, and John and Rick, our business manager. So we had all those folks, for the most part, and attending those interviews that day. And afterwards, we met again to rank the potential partners. And it was pretty unanimous that we would go with Roof Above. And let me explain some of the reasons why we felt that was going to be our best partner. As you heard Liz mention today, that they already have about 700 units of supportive housing, and so they have a big strength in that area. They are committed to that housing first philosophy that Liz mentioned earlier today, where we don't expect you to jump through a bunch of hoops to move into our housing. It's important to get you housed. Housing is a basic human need, and we're not going to ask you jump through a bunch of hoops to do that. They also have experience with our development partner. You guys haven't heard about that today, but we are partnering with a company called Dream Key. And Dream Key is assisting us in the development process, and Roof Above has worked with Dream Key before. And most importantly, in my opinion, is that stable subsidy. Because I've seen folks trying to live in affordable housing that really don't have the income to live there. I've seen folks back in my early days, some of the seniors I worked with, were getting about $600 from supplemental security income from the government. And if they didn't have that subsidy, what you'll hear referred to sometimes as Section 8 or vouchers, if they didn't have that, rent was $400, which seems pretty cheap. But if you got $600 to live on and your rent is $400, that is not affordable. They also, Roof Above has a great ratio of caseworkers to residents. They have 1 to 15, and so we'll have, several caseworkers here working probably with different residents. And then, of course, they have a large array of additional services that will assist their clients in rebuilding. So with that, we made the recommendation to this session that we partner with Roof Above, and this session unanimously approved that back in October. And thank you for everything, all the support you guys have given us in this process. I do want to point out that now that we have Lori, who's going to be leading our education portion of this process, along with Joe from Roof Above, I'm sure Lori would love to talk to any of you who would be interested in helping on that committee. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to our Roof Above team, Liz, Kay Dawn, and Joe, and they're going to talk a little bit more.
So you all heard from me already, so I'm going to have my two colleagues introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, I guess. My name is Kay Dawn Brunel, and I am the Chief Program Officer at Roof Above. I am relatively new to the Charlotte area. I've been here for just over a year. I worked in New York in homeless services for about the past 15 years. My last stop was as the Vice President of Programming for a similar organization doing work in supportive housing and emergency shelter. So very excited to be with you here today.
And good afternoon, my name is Joe Hamby, and I'm the Director of Community Education at Roof Above. It's a new position for me. I've been with Roof Above for about 10 years now, mostly working in our emergency shelters and mostly working, assisting our men in finding meaningful employment. So I've been right there in the trenches with our guests there, and have really enjoyed that work. And now I'm on to a new challenge, and absolutely delighted to learn from you. Amazing, as someone said, amazing depth of knowledge in this room, and particularly with Lori, and being on this learning journey with you over the next year. I'm excited.
I think you guys know you have a rock star in your congregation. Like when you say like our education partner is Dr. Lori Thomas, it's like, well, she's the entire Southeast education partner on this issue, so you got a lot of strength. And she's also very busy, so just selfishly, we're both from East Tennessee, so selfishly I'm excited that I'll have a little chance to spend some time with her. I think largely what I'd love to do, and let me make sure I'm following the script, but is open for questions and hear what's on your mind. And it seems like the theme is a theme of questions. So I'll say that by saying we might not have answers to lots of your questions, but we'd love to hear what the questions are. But I will share just a few words before we open the floor to questions. So Roof Above, you heard me say, like, we started in basic needs, you know, serving lunch, having emergency shelter. And if you do that for not so very long, you realize people don't have ways paths out of homelessness. So we began developing our own housing. And we do that really through two primary means. So one is we develop and own and operate actual units. So you might know More Place, and we just opened the Rise SEC, the Rise on Plan, the converted hotel. We're the owner, we figured out how to put the capital stack together, we operate it, it's our staff members, we're the property managers. So that's one mechanism. The other, and that's beautiful because then we're the landlord, and so we get to say everyone is welcome, right? So there are people who otherwise have a hard time finding a place to rent, and we can welcome them. And we design our buildings in a specific way that allow us to serve folks who might have challenges in more traditional housing environments. That is also very expensive, as you all know, and it takes a long time to do. So the faster way to create housing is through partnerships with landlords. And so you take these vouchers and you take case managers and you partner with existing landlords and move people directly from homelessness into a private marketplace apartment. That voucher is what makes it affordable. So someone pays 30% of whatever their income is, and if their income's zero, 30% of zero is zero. So that allows us to move folks in without income, and then the voucher pays the difference from whatever the landlord is asking to whatever the tenant can pay. And that has been a great way for us to expand housing quickly. And in a recession, when landlords have a hard time finding tenants who can pay that monthly rent, those vouchers look very appealing. And landlords in 2007, 2008, 2009, landlords were very happy to partner with us. Fast forward to 2022, where you can raise the rent 20% every year, and people are going to pay it because people need housing. And so we are in this time of unprecedented rent raises, and we can no longer find partners for these vouchers to be used. And so we have some really significant limits that we're seeing, not just as Roof Above, but in this model of scattered site housing. So what we propose to Caldwell is a little bit of a hybrid approach between the single site and what we call our scattered site model. And so this is one building. So part of what we'll be doing with property management is creating ways for that building to really feel like not just a collection of apartments, but feel like a community. It's 21 units, so it's not huge, right? So that'll be creative for us to figure out how to create that sense of community. But then we're really approaching it a bit like our scattered site model. So we're thinking about, well, Caldwell is a landlord that we're going to partner with for these 21 units. So we're actually taking the vouchers we already have, the case managers we already have, the nurses who already work with this program, and instead of taking those 21 vouchers and partnering with private landlords, we're going to take those 21 vouchers and partner with Caldwell. A huge word for us is invitation. So the things we do are invitational. So we're not going to say, hey, you 21 people, here's your housing placement. Easter's Home will be an option that as we work with tenants, tenants will have the possibility to opt into Easter's Home. For some people, I think this will be such an exciting housing opportunity. For other people who might like a little more isolation, this might not be the right opportunity. So it's important to us that the tenants we work with have choice as much as possible in this rental climate. And so this housing opportunity will be invitational. And then our services are invitational. So we have case managers, we have nurse. We go to people's apartments and offer these services. That is not a requirement to housing. So we work our staff to be as creative as possible. to build relationship and rapport, so that when a case manager is knocking on the door, that you're excited to open that door, that you feel known and cared about. And so our case managers can be creative in how they build that rapport. So we will not have just 1 or 2 case managers working with Easter's Home. We'll have a collection of different case managers who are already partnered with the tenants who will be moving in here. So that's the basic thinking of how we're approaching this. We're grateful we have this admin.
God has spoken.
So that maybe was my clue to open for questions. Because I could stand up here all day and talk. So, and then Kay, Don, and Joe will also be here to answer questions.
Questions for Liz or? Yes. Still working out the kinks?
Okay, yes. Having never worked with a homeless population, I guess my question is, what kind of concerns or anxieties would folks have about possibly living at Caldwell? What would they come in with in terms of concerns?
I'm gonna do a lot of running. My lights don't seem to be working.
So thank you for that question. I think it's an important question to ask. Is what is the comfort level of the folks who we will be moving into these units, and it really will vary. I think some of the questions they'll ask is, what level of commitment do we have to Caldwell if we move in here? Am I committed to participating in church service on Sunday? Am I required to participate in any programming? Being that we are so close, the building is so close in terms of proximity to the worship hall, what is Caldwell expecting of us? And I think it will be equally important for us to be able to answer those questions, right? And to be able to tell the folks that we are proposing this housing opportunity to, that Caldwell is here to provide support in any way that you are comfortable participating in. And to be able to kind of clearly delineate exactly what that means will be critical in terms of communicating to the people that we serve.
As far as the people living here, are you going to mainly have single people or family people or?
Sure. Okay, great. So yeah, we will be housing single adults, which is who we work with as an organization, is generally single adults experiencing chronic homelessness.
And keep in mind, these units are studio units, about 350 square feet, so.
I don't need this one. Oh, here it goes again.
Oh, gotcha, okay. In a follow-up to the question about what people are worried about, make sure that people who are not Christian know that they are welcome. This is not working.
So Jennifer's point was, back to the other question, we want to make sure that religion is not a factor in housing here, which of course under the Fair Housing Act, we cannot give preference to certain religions, and we need to be careful about what we provide that isn't provided in other faith-based. So I don't know if one of you wants to address.
I had a question too.
You got another?
Well, that was going to be the point to make, and then the question was.
It's on if anybody wants to pass this one around.
Here you go. Okay. Oh, does this work better? Yes. So the question was, what kind of access will folks have to substance abuse treatment? And you can answer with anything too if you want.
So one of the goals of our case management teams is to help connect the people who we are housing to the appropriate level of community support. So if someone is struggling with substance use and is interested in programming, our goal is to connect them to outpatient programming and or whatever level of programming is they require, right? So if someone has ongoing mental health issues, our goal is to get them connected to the appropriate level of service as well. And that varies greatly from individual to individual. So the most important thing for us to do is early on help develop relationships with the people we serve so that they can see us as a resource that they can rely on for those sorts of needs.
Yeah. And I'll just echo that with the word invitational again. And so as we build those relationships, we see housing, like I used to do street outreach, and it's like when someone moved into housing, like it was the best feeling, right? Someone got the key, they signed their lease, they were off in tears, that moment of being able to lock your door and feel safe. And from street outreach, I'm like, that's the finish line, that's awesome. But the reality is housing is just foundational. It's just the beginning. So what our case managers get to ask is, okay, you know, you've been spending the last year or 4 years or 10 years focused on surviving. Now you have this basic need met. What do you want to do with this opportunity? What do you want your life to look like, and what do you want to work on? And that's really where our case management comes in, is journeying with people on those goals that they state for themselves. And so in terms of connectivity to substance use, that will really come up as people voice what it is that they want to work on, or what challenges might be coming up that's maybe an obstacle to keeping housing.
Good morning. I understand that your organization will be helping Caldwell in selecting the guests at our facility. So my question to you is, could you tell us just in general what factors you look to select guests?
Yeah, and we use, just so you know, we use the language of tenant. So when someone moves into housing, we use the language of tenant. And so we really look to, and we're actually part of a community process that asks the question, who needs housing the most? Who's most vulnerable? Who's most likely to die without housing? That's who we're trying to serve. So the reality is there's thousands of people who could benefit from this opportunity, but who do we think needs it the most? And so there's a cadre of questions that get asked across the community to help identify those folks. We have very few other, we really have no other than we do serve singles, so we're limited on that. We do serve folks 18 and older, but otherwise those are our main eligibility criteria. Now, when we go out and partner with landlords can have different eligibility criteria. So that will be part of the work that we do with Caldwell, is this, like, Caldwell is located next to an elementary school. This will not be a place for folks who might be on the sex offender registry. We do provide housing for folks on the sex offender registry because everybody needs housing, including folks on that registry. This would not be an option there just by law. And so there might be parameters that Caldwell wants to set, but in terms of parameters that Roof Above set, vulnerability is the primary one in need.
Other questions?
Sorry. What about furniture and beds? Do you work with other partners that provide
Those types of things for people as they're moving in?
Okay, we do. So, and places that we develop, you know, we, like Warren Place and the Horizon Plan, we provide kind of standard furniture that matches all the units. I anticipate with this project, it will be more like a traditional apartment home, which is we'll work with the individuals to furnish their own apartments. And we partner primarily with Crisis Assistance Ministry and also a great group, Furnish for Good. And then we also work with tenants themselves, and sometimes, you know, you'd be surprised. I've moved folks in who've kept a storage unit throughout their time of homelessness and can't wait. They've been holding on to something special and can't wait to bring it in. Or the process of creating a home can be very important for someone. So things like a bed and chairs and pots and pans, we try to do that welcome home stuff right up front. But the process of turning those basics into a home is a process that can take months or years, but is an important
Am I correct in understanding that this property will not be used as an emergency shelter?
Yes, you are correct in understanding. It will be used as a supportive housing. Yeah. As a supportive housing program, essentially. So 21 units of supportive housing. So traditionally, we will have to actually sit with Caldwell and determine whether or not we'll utilize a lease, a standard lease where the tenant will be named, or whether or not we'll utilize an occupancy agreement where Roof Above would be the named tenant and subleasing essentially the space. But we will work through those particulars and be able to answer those questions.
And Scott, to your point, we haven't put time restrictions on how long a resident can stay. I mean, once they move in, they want to stay 10, 12, 15, 20 years, as long as they're willing, right? And, you know, they meet the criteria and qualify, right? They're there, right? So we have not put, it's not emergency housing, it's not temporary supportive housing, this is a permanent supportive housing model.
Is it men and women?
Yeah.
We need to use the mic for people who are online,
So the question was, will Easter's Home be available to both men and women? And the answer is yes. So single adults, you know, who are experiencing homelessness, chronic homelessness.
So I know that one of the concerns with this was adding to the burdens of John and Gail in managing the property. So I was very relieved to hear you say that you are also going to, excuse me, take on the role of property management. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that looks like? Will you have one person dedicated to that? And how will you manage when a toilet overflows and the most convenient people are John and Gail?
So it's actually at an opportune moment that we made this partnership. We've recently redesigned our facilities management team. So we have kind of a leadership structure around facilities management, as well as an outbound team of facility technicians who can address needs in scattered site programming. So being that this is a single location, we'll likely have someone overseeing the day-to-day maintenance needs of the space. So hopefully we definitely won't need to be calling anyone for simple needs. If we are talking about kind of capital changes or larger scale, adjustments to the building, then we'll likely need to bring Caldwell in for a broader discussion about how to address those issues. But day-to-day issues, we should be able to manage those.
And I'll just say, one, Gail and John should be very proud that what we heard from everyone is this fear that a pipe's going to burst and people are going to call John and Gail. So you guys are very concerned for your pastor's time. So you should feel good about that. They should feel good about that. We still have some things to figure out on property management. We have experience in property management, but in buildings that we own. So this will be new for us, so we'll ask for patience. So we're still figuring that out, but I think there's the emergency issues, but then there's also how do we create community and community norms and have presence on site, but for 21 units, that's not probably needing to be 24-hour coverage. So we'll live into that, and we have some questions to answer, and you'll be with us on that journey.
Adults only, and what if a tenant starts a family?
Yeah, so it is adults only. There have been times where tenants have, met and fallen in love and brought someone else onto the space, and we will try to accommodate and or find them appropriate housing outside of that space. But the understanding is that this is for single occupancy. So yes, that is kind of the baseline rule for the space.
Is there a limit on like no smoking or any other drug use or alcohol abuse, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so again, there are a number of things that will need to come together as a community to determine like what is appropriate in terms of smoking. I will say though, this is a housing first. We operate out of the housing first model. So, I think there needs to be an expectation that there may be some level of use taking place as folks are going through, are moving into their units and acclimating, and people are in varying stages of their own recovery. So yes, I do anticipate that there may be use on site in the building.
Well, I'll add to that. Say smoking is a separate conversation, and that's so we at our properties allow smoking in rooms, not because it's always best for folks' health, but because it's a hard policy to implement. And if you have that rule, you invariably end up evicting people over smoking if folks are addicted to smoking. So, but we do have landlords who are non-smoking. We do our best then to partner non-smokers. So that's a separate conversation. And we'll see where Caldwell is. I think from a roof above perspective, alcohol is legal. Folks are adults. It's very difficult. So we anticipate that alcohol will be allowed just as it is in, other housing and apartment communities throughout our community. Drug use, if drugs are illegal, they're illegal everywhere. So that includes here. And then the question is really just how do we work with people if they're in that cycle of addiction?
So as far as the structural part of it, Caldwell had worked with the architect to design rooms and kind of where the family rooms would be, or the gathering rooms would be. Will you use that as a basis, or modify that, or start over?
Yeah, I think that would be a question we'd have to answer in tandem.
Yeah. So the design that we did with Ellen Weinstein and her team, right, was meeting NCHFA standards, right, which is one of our funding sources. So when you look at them, they meet those minimum requirements. So I think we'll probably be able to fit within that structure, right?
Just want to tie that off a little bit more, and everything that's been said is spot on. Imagine a hotel room with a kitchenette. That's what we're talking about. A separate bathroom, bedroom / living area, kitchenette. Our friends at Electrolux have donated all of the appliances, so that's great. Each unit will have its own HVAC control. We've got to figure out billing and all of that. But these will be full studio apartments with each its own bathroom. And while there's a little leeway around that, there's really not a whole lot, because we want to start construction in the first quarter of 23. We've already done the demolition. So the drawings have been submitted. The contractor is pricing out what it will take to build this. So we're fairly committed, to Linda's question, to the designs that we received from WFA, Weinstein Friedline Architect, which are informed by our best desires to give them suitable rooms and what we understand. The furniture, fixtures, and equipment we've got to work on. That will be hopefully in the budget, but we'll want to. I think it'll be somewhat, I don't want to say institutional, but we've got to anticipate their needs and give them as much comfort as possible, but it won't be, a bed from Dennis's house and a bedside table from Doreen's house and a lamp from Jim's house. It's not going to be that. We'll buy stuff that we know is durable, bed bug resistant, that kind of thing. And all that's pretty well down the path, I think, Eddie, is that right?
Yeah.
Going to add to what John said. I directed an interim housing program here over the past year, and the men there had probably a room similar size to that, and in the whole course of that time, I never had a complaint about the size of the room or the quality of the furnishings. they were so grateful to have that sense of privacy and safety, and yet at the same time, the ability to come together and be a part of a community, and we had a community room as a part of that. So it was not anywhere close to the level that this facility will be, and we had many problems with plumbing and heating and cooling, and I would have been complaining and calling the mayor of Charlotte to come and fix this, and the men there were incredibly patient with the structure that we were living in. We were just glad to be together and safe and warm or cool. Sometimes too warm, sometimes too cool. But again, the size of the place was never a question. And it's kind of like going into IKEA. Y'all go into IKEA and you see these amazing little mini units that are 350 square foot, and you go, I could possibly live in something like it. It's got everything I possibly need. Now, I'm not sure I could, but still, I think it really invites us to reimagine how much space we actually need.
Well, and I'll just add, the program Joe's referring to is less than half a mile from here. It was at the former King's College dorms, and the thing we heard over and over is how much guys loved being in this neighborhood, right next to the park, walking distance uptown. So for us, and putting in for this RFI, huge opportunity to be located here, and we think that's going to really bring lots of opportunity and lots of joy to folks.
John mentioned separate HVAC controls. Is the air system going to be enclosed enough so that somebody's choice to smoke in their room is not going to impact some asthmatic down the hall?
That's probably an Eddie question.
Good construction question. And to be quite honest, I don't know. Right? So, but it's definitely something we can ask the architect on what their design thought process was behind that. Right? So. Yeah, understood.
How about being handicapped accessible?
There'll be, I think we needed 20%, or it was 10%, right, John? 10 or 10?
The rules are different depending on which program you're following.
Yeah, so I think we have at least 2 rooms, 2 units on the bottom floor that will be handicapped accessible. So.
Yeah, when you have federal subsidy, you're required to have 5% of the units, or a minimum of 1. So, but then there's also the ADA regulations. So every room will have the ability to put in grab bars and things, but in terms of wheelchair accessibility, there'll be at least 2.
Yep.
You mentioned the people would be chosen based on how vulnerable they were to not survive if they didn't have housing. Could you elaborate a little on the factors that make these people vulnerable? I mean, is it illness? Is it substance abuse? Is it lack of support? Or is what? Yes.
Well, that is actually a loaded question without even realizing it. So it's a community process, and actually we use as a community a tool that many other communities have used that actually I think Dr. Thomas has been also critical of. And so we as a community are trying to figure out, how do you define vulnerability? And it has primarily been defined around keeping people alive. So medical components and deadly medical components have been a big piece of that. There are schools of thoughts that say, well, vulnerability is many things, and so women who are sleeping outside are more vulnerable to sexual violence, and that might not be death, but that's a real vulnerability. So right now our community is looking at medical issues, looking at mental health challenges, substance use challenges, the combination of the 2, experiences of violence outside, childhood trauma, race is a component of that. And so I would say right now, one, it's always going to be an imperfect system because everybody needs housing. So any moment you're parsing out who needs it more than someone else, it's automatically problematic. But That being said, we're wrestling as a community, and there have been a lot more eyes on racial justice and the ways that how we used to look at things. Really, we're not as inclusive as it could have been, and so our community's actively looking at that. But I'd say medical and mental health challenges and substance use challenges, histories of violence remain at the top of that list.
And I think part of our preparation and planning, right, in the season that we're in right now, pre having residents here, is part of what the education track is going to help us with, right? Educating us as a congregation what it means to be homeless, what it means to be formerly homeless, right? So, and how we as a congregation can prepare for that, right? So great questions from that piece, but I think that's part of what the education stream is going to help us understand, right? So, because the more you uncover, the more there is, right? Kevin,
So-
I think you had a question?
Over here first, Eddie.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right.
I just had a quick suggestion. Sitting here and looking at that wall that clearly has been painted, a great way for community building is to work on a mural together. And Charlotte is becoming a city of murals, and so I don't know if we have to get permission or whatever, but it'd be so wonderful to have a mural that reflects welcome, that the residents actually get to fill in and work on to feel part of the community. So I just thought I would
My
offer that.
challenge with that is from a construction perspective. Believe it or not, these two buildings need to be connected from a zoning perspective, because otherwise the city of Charlotte or the county, right, will not allow us to build the 21 units in that one building. So there is going to be some sort of connector between that building and this building. So,
Well, some walls, some.
so, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
If safety or security concerns were to arise on campus, how are those going to be addressed?
Yeah, and we anticipate there will be, right? It's housing, so that will happen. And so that will be part of property management. And so what we ask for a roof above perspective is that from the Caldwell perspective, that there's a point of contact and that we roof above have a point of contact. So, if there's a concern, we don't need, 7 church members calling KDON, but 7 church members knowing who at Caldwell to talk with, and then we'll have that relationship formed between Caldwell and roof above, who are the points of contact, and regular, we are big believers in preemptive work, and so it's like our case management happens inside people's apartments. We go inside people's apartments because you can tell more about what's going on with someone in that case. And so we try to prevent things before they become issues, but issues are inevitable in any housing environment. And so then we'll have a point of contact and ways that we manage. And so then questions like, is the lease in the tenant's name? Is it a master lease with roof above? That becomes important to know how much flexibility we have in responding.
And regardless of the arrangement, there is an understanding, like a documented understanding of what is acceptable behavior in any of the of our housing units is, right? So kind of like an occupancy agreement of sorts that dictates what the expectations are of residing in that community.
Other questions?
Mine isn't really a question, it's more a comment. So in our work with thriving congregations, one of the things we thought about in this building is an audit sort of the neighborhood of a mile or so around, what people have access to, like a grocery store, transportation, all those sorts of things. So I'm comforted to know you had King's College just up the road here, because I'm guessing that means you have a pretty good idea of what some of those resources are here. It's not something I ever thought about before, but in some ways there's a lot here and in some ways there's not. So I'm glad you have some knowledge of that.
We'd still take any supplemental, resource documents or resource collections that you guys have, because we will need to put together kind of here's where you live now, here's your community, here's where you access these things, sort of resource for anyone who would be moving into this space.
Yeah, that is a good question. and having worked here for a year, the Harris Teeter on Central is probably the largest. I mean, it's probably the closest, like major. But the Family Dollar up here, we can talk real world all day, because I remember hit the Family Dollar really close by, because they have a decent selection of foods there, and they had and they were not big chefs by and large, so we had microwaves in the room. So if it was microwavable, it was good to go. And we also provided lunches for men during the day, so that they could take a lunch to work. It was for men who were working. So again, but for the most part, it is about a mile. I think someone measured it's about a mile away for the Harris Teeter.
I'll just say, one thing I'm excited about is, like, that could be a place where Caldwell might say, hey, every Thursday morning we've got a van and we're gonna do a drive to the Harris Teeter. That's something that we can think about here that we couldn't think about with our traditional landlord partners. So, and some of those, like, that might be what we think people need, but what people really want is X, Y, or Z. And so we'll live into this together as we have tenants and as we listen to their needs, and tenants will change over time. So the relationship will continue to change and develop.
And as you've seen, Roof Above not only provides these housing services, but you've heard mention all kinds of other services. The sandwiches, right now the youth, actually it looks like they're coming through the doors. The youth are making shelter sandwiches, which we've been doing once a month with the help of Karen Williams. So if you're ever interested in that, we try and do that once a month, and it's usually right before church, but the youth did it today after church. And this Friday, if you're not aware, we're so excited. Imagine this space with bedding for 8 men. We're going to do that once a month through the Room in the Inn term. We've been partnering in the past with St. John's right over here, but now that we have our own space, we are going to be providing on the second Friday of the month through March now. We're going to be providing overnight services for those men where we feed them dinner, breakfast, and send them off with a bag lunch in the morning. So thank you all for everything that you're doing for the community of around here in Charlotte and the vulnerable folks that we see every night. Anybody else? John?
I don't want to preempt any other questions. I wanted to not close out, but add something kind of to cap off. But are there other questions? These are great questions, and there are so many. And so write them down. Maybe what we can do is create questions about Easter's Home email thing. I bet Justin Martin could probably figure that out. And I said Justin Martin, he came running. No, I was speaking as an example, but about creating an address where people can send questions.
Easter at CaldwellRoad.org, we'll give you 24 hours.
Saint Justin. Did y'all talk about funding?
I mentioned that it's changed 3 times this week.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to go into detail.
Well, just in case you want to know, because this is something to pray over. We got 4.2 million or so confirmed, committed. We think the project is up to about 6.5 in cost. The good news is that city and county are flush with extra funds from the American Relief Program that was passed during COVID. We are on the city's consideration list. We didn't make the cut last Monday, but we've also applied to the county for $2.5 million. There's another $1.5 million out there with some foundations that we've been in very active conversation with. They want to be kind of gap closers. They're come to us at the last minute, will let us close the gap. But y'all know that what they say about how the egg and the pig are differently involved in breakfast? The chicken is involved, the pig is committed. We're committed. We've gutted this building, and our developer, Dreamkey, is committed. So this is going to happen. It's an interesting endeavor to take on a $6.5 million project without knowing where the $6.5 million is right now. But we're people of faith, and this developer is the granddaddy or grandparent of doing this work in Charlotte. And so, with our friends from Irish Park Methodist and others, we're going to do this. Next steps on the funding model are we should hear in early January whether or not we get the county ARPA money, that $2.5 million or some subset thereof. And then we will go to these other foundations that are on standby, but commit to these types of projects. So we're going to close the gap. That's just, God's got that already. In terms of next steps, I want you to mark the last Sunday in January on your calendar. We're gonna, you'll hear more from the committee, the Congregational Preparation Committee, or we need to come probably up with a better name than that, but that Dr. Lori Thomas is gonna lead. But 2023, and you've heard me say this before, but 2023 is gonna be a year of regular offerings according to both a written curriculum, but also lots of in-person learning to tell us what we need to know. Every, let's say, 30 days, we're going to learn about trauma or addiction or poverty and racism, that we're a journey we're already on. We've got a lot to learn to be the best neighbors possible, to know what we should do and what we shouldn't do when Bob is out in the courtyard and Bob might not be having a good day. How do we best help Bob? We will start that at the last Sunday in January. The author of Shelter Theology, which the ACE class is reading. I want you all to all get this book. Shelter Theology by Susan Dunlap is a book about the theology and the spiritual lives of the homeless. And so our first step on preparing in this journey is going to be to ground ourselves in the different types of spirituality of folks that are on the streets, because for them, spirituality is survival. It's not you like John Calvin more than Martin Luther, or anything like that. It's about what does it take to survive. And the ACE class has been loving this book. I think they've got one more chapter to talk about, I guess maybe in January, I'm not sure. Buy the book, read it. The author will be here that last Sunday in January, and she'll speak in church, and then we'll come here and do some workshops because she's walked with the homeless population in Durham, and she leads worship with them every week. And we need to understand spiritually them and ourselves, and how we can be the body of Christ to those folks. And then look for, from Dr. Thomas, a curriculum of offerings on a very steady drumbeat throughout 2023, so that next year this time we will all be given the opportunity, and I hope taken the opportunity, and Joe and his team are going to help us with this. But what do we need to know, largely speaking, as a bunch of middle class and people, about how we can best support these children of God that are about to come in and transform our property and transform our lives. So I just wanted to say that, and I'll turn it back over to Eddie.
Any other questions before we close up? No. Okay. I just want you to keep this in mind. There are 21 individuals that we do not know yet that will be partaking on our property and will be the benefactors of the work that we're doing today, right? And please keep them in your hearts and your minds as you leave here today. Because at the end of the day, once they are housed and we have done that, we have done what Caldwell Easter's Home has set out to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.